You are listening to Gaza Voices, a place to connect to the real, lived experiences of Gazans on the ground following the events of October 7th, 2023. This show is a collaboration between Palestinians and allies around the world. We aim to amplify the voices of people impacted by the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza at this moment in history, and to underline the personal cost of survival under siege. My name is Sen Jan. I'm one of the narrators for this podcast. You'll hear me and the voices of Palestinians and diverse allies bring in additional information over the course of this show to support the context of these voices from Gaza. Our first episode highlights the moment-to-moment decisions facing one 26-year-old Gazan as the bombardments after October 7th began. Two members of our team speak with him about the hard choices he and his family had to make as they navigated unreliable information and the beginnings of food scarcity. We hold the question of how survivors who have evacuated from Gaza reckon with what has happened and how they see their lives now. This is Omar Alrabi in Amman, Jordan, speaking firstly to Ahmed Naeem and then Mohammed Omar on our team. This interview was conducted on January 17th, 2024, shortly after Omar evacuated from Gaza.
My name is Omar Alrabi, and I'm 26 years old. I've been living in Gaza ever since 1999. I've grew up there and lived there my whole life. Like, my whole life revolved around Gaza. So it's always my home, and it always will be, despite the fact that I've now managed to evacuate with my family after 26 days of the aggression on Gaza. It goes without even saying that 30 or 26 days is nothing compared to 103 days. I'm ready to share that experience with everyone and hope it really impacts people and moves them forward to be in solidarity with Gaza.
Thank you so much, Omar. The first question going to be, can you describe your life before 6th of October and from 7th of October and forward?
So starting with my life before the 7th of October, it was basically revolved around simplicity. At those times where you wake up, you're energized, and I go to work, and I worked at a program called Gaza Sky Geeks, and I was able to help many people with their tech education in general. So it's a 9-to-5 job, and then go see my friends in the afternoon, see my family after that, hang out, take walks everywhere, pretty much in Gaza, because what makes Gaza special is the fact that it's a pretty small and confined space. So a 1-hour walk would suffice in seeing most of Gaza, which is very beautiful. Everyone knows everyone in Gaza. It's not a place where you feel like, oh, that's a huge city and a huge country. All the faces in Gaza are familiar. I keep repeating the word simple because simplicity was key in Gaza. But yet at the same time, we never complained. We always loved it. And that was so precious about Gaza.
Home to 2.3 million inhabitants, Gaza is a self-governing Palestinian territory of about 365 square kilometers. It is bordered by Israel and Egypt on the Mediterranean coast. Its major cities include North Gaza, Gaza City, Khan Yunis, and Rafah. As a homeland bordered by Mediterranean waters, the sea serves an important role as a meeting point for the people of Palestine. But for the last 50 years, Gaza's borders, land, and water have been controlled by the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. Following the takeover of Gaza in 2007 by Hamas, a blockade was imposed on the Gazan people, preventing the movement of goods and people in and out of the territory. Entry and exit into Gaza can currently take place only by land in 3 places. 2 of these crossings are controlled by Israel and 1 by Egypt. Despite the stringent conditions of life, Gaza was also home to a growing local tech scene. With unemployment rates at nearly 50%, the most common jobs for those with tech skills were as freelance IT workers. Many of the buildings that Gaza's IT freelancers use to conduct work for international companies, including offices and co-working spaces, have now been destroyed. This includes the headquarters of Gaza Sky Geeks, a tech hub founded with support from Google, and the office where Omar was employed.
And that's all about before 7th of October. And right after that, it was a 180 degrees shift. It was a life that I think not a single person in Gaza was ever prepared to endure and was ever built to endure. No electricity, no internet for the most part. A lot of people lost internet connection from day one, and just continuous bombardment at such a heavy load, and on another level, so aggressive that you don't know where the bombing is happening, and it's happening everywhere.
Since the beginning of Israel's siege on Gaza, following Hamas's attack on October 7th, more than 32,000 people have been killed and nearly 75,000 injured. Within the first month of the war, Israel has dropped hundreds of 2,000-pound explosives on Gaza, and the level of destruction has been the equivalent of 2 nuclear bombs.
Ever since day one, there's no safe place in the Gaza Strip. From the north all the way to the south, east and west, each and every place and everywhere. I was with my mother that day. My father managed to travel to Amman 2 days before the aggression happened or started. So on the 5th of October, he traveled. And I have a sister, we're a family of 4, and my sister is married. She was at her home with her husband, and then everything started. And the first bombardment that happened that we actually heard, it was literally 100 to 200 meters away from our own home. We live in an 11-story residential building, and we're on the 7th floor. And it was very close. And I remember so much basically smoke erupting and all of it going in through the windows, because usually you'd hear that from every Gazan. Whenever anything like that starts or escalates, we always open or crack open the windows, because at the fear of so much pressure from the heavy bombardment and the glasses shattering and injuring people. It was very close, and at the same time, it was the first experience for me and my mother to be alone and an aggression. And because Gaza, unfortunately, and with such a sad heart, I say this, Gaza is a history of aggressions, which in nowhere near close to acceptable to anyone, that an entire population of 2.3, 2.4 million living in continuous aggressions. I was in elementary school at the first aggression in 2008, and then there's 2012, and then there's 2014, and then the aggressions that happened after that from 2020, 2021, 2022, and here we are, 2023. This is the most violent. It's a massacre, it's a genocide, hands down. And at the same time, it's the longest period of time. The second longest was 2014, 52 days. But this one, we're talking about 103 going into 104 now. So my mom and I, after the first bombing close to our home, we started thinking maybe we should go to my sister's house and her husband, maybe just to keep each other company. 4 people are just better than 2 at such a situation. So the idea that we did not even prepare for what's to come, starting this day forward to today, what we packed were just 2 backpacks, and just I had 2 shirts, pants, and just 1 shoe. That's it. That's what I packed. And my phone as well. That's it. So we went to my sister's home, which is pretty close by. I think it's like a kilometer away from our own home. It's about the company. That's why we went there.
Can I ask just a question regarding to you said no safe zone from day one.
Yeah.
But what do you say regarding to what the Israeli government announced before, that they are not actually targeting any civilians? They are really making a surgical invention, and they just asked people to leave. They tried their best just to tell everyone who are really in a dangerous zone to leave. Is there any kind of phone calls or any kind of information? And second, you mentioned that the internet or the connection has been cut, or there's no connection from the day one. How did you guys just get the information about safe zones?
So the idea of safe zones, it's a great point that you mentioned here, because I believe one of the most effective things that shift the world's attention towards only focusing on the terror attacks and we're responsible and Israel is doing this for its own safety and so on, is the fact that mainstream media and the Western media platforms always broadcast some big, very important official in the IDF, and they start speaking about we inform people of evacuation, we inform them of safe zones, we inform them that the zone that they're living in or residing in currently is a dangerous zone and they have to evacuate today or in the next few days, and so on. But in reality, no safe zone, as I was in contact with all of my friends, no one from day one, there was no whole idea of safe zones or anything. The whole idea of safe zones started 2 weeks after everything, after the 7th of October, approximately. They started talking about safe zones as an official announcement. So you'd go on and search through Twitter, search through Facebook, and so on about IDF officials and so on. And then they tell you, oh, population of Gaza or the civilians of Gaza, this is not a safe zone, evacuate from it. They'll be under intense bombardment or intense military action and so on.
A week after the October 7th Hamas-led attack on Israeli villages close to the border of Gaza, which resulted in 1,200 deaths and 240 hostages, paper leaflets dropped from the sky informing over 1 million residents in northern Gaza that they had 24 hours to leave their homes in advance of an imminent ground invasion. Although Israel has announced safe zones and humanitarian corridors to relocate civilians out of northern Gaza and towards the south, the reality on the ground was very different. Despite being told they would be safe if they evacuated through these zones, thousands of Palestinian civilians have lost their lives following the evacuation instructions given to them. Some struck in their cars by Israeli airstrikes, and others as they fled on foot.
But from day one, meters away, 100 meters to 200 meters away from my own home, there was a targeting, there was a bombing to basically like a small house, no prior warning. Some people may argue that, 200 meters away and maybe they know their stuff, they're experienced, so they didn't call you because they know you wouldn't be harmed and you're here right now. But what I don't believe about that is my two best friends from 2019, Khalid and Salah, the twins, they were targeted at their own home along with their family. And no phone calls, no telling them that this is not a safe zone, no telling them that they need to evacuate. And they were killed. They were deliberately targeted and killed. They were not casualties. They were not people who were in the wrong place at the wrong time. So tell this argument about safe zones to my best friends. So this is now the so-called safe zone, as reported by the IDF, is being continuously bombed. There has been a telecommunications blackout for 6 days, and during the 6 days, I can't hear anything about my relatives and friends and colleagues. I don't know anything about them, but every day before that blackout, I'd call them and they'd say, bombardment is very close, it's very near. I keep losing people. Khalid and Salah were the start of it. I lost those two dear friends. They were killed on October the 11th, fourth day of this aggression. But then I lost so many people that I know very dear and very close, and so many acquaintances, so many friends. It's everywhere. It's literally everywhere.
I'm so sorry to your loss. And this time actually is different. I know from my experience and then the war before that, I lived just one war, 2008, 2009. And compared to this wars, actually, people in Gaza just said it was just a clash, or it was actually nothing comparison to what's going on right now. Can you just comment on this? If you felt it's different from day one?
What I'm about to say as a reality of each and every person, civilian in Gaza, this in nowhere should ever just be acceptable and okay to everyone. That right now I'm talking about going through many aggressions, at least 4. This shouldn't be a daily conversation between people. This shouldn't be like, yeah, I lived the 2008 aggression. Yeah, I was in the 2012. And yeah, I was in the 2014. And yes, I survived the 2023 aggression. and genocide. This is not a normal conversation for people to have. This is a clear violation of human rights. And apparently now human rights, as we can see, only applies to a certain people from a certain background, from a certain ethnicity, and from a certain color. Not everyone is deserved of human rights, apparently, because as you can see, Gazans, 103 days, and they've been crying and pleading for help from each and every person, every official, every person in power, every government, and receiving none. People are saying, yeah, the aid has been increased in Gaza. Gaza used to have around 500 aid trucks enter daily on the good days before the aggression. So when we were talking about 68 trucks going in on a day and calling this an achievement, I don't know how can you possibly fathom that this is an acceptable reality. On day one of this 2023 aggression, you couldn't tell that it's going to be different. You could sense it, but then you would have this thought that no, maybe it'll be okay, maybe it'll calm down, because you're having a mental battle with yourself. You don't want to go and say this is not going to be good, this is going to be the worst, we're all going to die, because if you keep this mentality, you won't survive. You can ask anyone in Gaza, most of them wouldn't tell you that they expected what we're witnessing here today for 103 days, because you can watch literally any scary movie, horror, post-apocalyptic zombie movie, there wouldn't be a town that's destroyed now like Gaza. Gaza is ruins now. Our past, our present, our daily life is ruins. And day by day, it would get worse. The 2021 was one of the toughest yet shortest aggressions, but this one is a genocide, a total genocide.
Can you just tell us in details about your journey? That how was it moving from north to south after the announcement of IDF?
So once they announced, we went from Gaza City to Al-Maghazi refugee camp. You've probably seen it on the news and how demolished it is. Al-Maghazi is one of the areas that is marked as safe area by the Israeli army. We stayed there for 4 days. And that was all around the last days of October. We're talking about October 20th.
The refugee camp at Al-Maghazi lies in the middle of the Gaza Strip, where several other refugee camps are located. Its area is less than 1 square kilometer, and in the first months of this war, sheltered around 100,000 people. Since October, it has been the target of repeated Israeli airstrikes, each with civilian casualties.
So in October 20th, 21st, after Al-Maghazi, we went to Khan Yunis, which is in the south, biggest city in the Gaza Strip and closest city to Rafah. We stayed there with my uncle, his wife, his children. He has 2 little kids. They're around 4 or 5 years old. And we were around between 30 to 40 people of men, women, and children, mostly even children. We stayed in that house. And we stayed from around the 21st, 22nd up to November 1st, when we were contacted after contacting the Jordanian Ministry of Exterior to evacuate us, as we hold the Jordanian passport and citizenship. And they managed to evacuate us on November 1st.
At the time of this recording, 2.2 million Gazans, or 96% of the population, have been forced to leave their homes. There has never been so much internal displacement in such a short time. People who have been told to leave their homes often have nowhere else to go, and so sleep in temporary shelters like tents, or even on the street.
Staying in the south, we stayed about around 10 days to 12 days, and that's where it really hit us, the scarcity of food, or what is right now called famine, which I don't really think famine is the best word to describe it, because it's usually happened with natural causes. For example, the land is not healthy enough basically for you to plant or so on. But when it's deliberate starvation of a big civilian population of millions and prohibiting them from food, it's forced starvation. And that's where it should be classified, in my own personal opinion.
regarding to your time in North Gaza, what was occupying your mind? What was the thoughts that in your mind during the aggression, especially in the night?
Again, this is a perspective of someone who lived 26 days, so imagine what people of 103 days have to tell you. When it comes to the mental battle or what ideas were in our heads, as you try to make it easier on yourself and to comfort yourself with the idea that it's okay. We're safe, we're civilians and whatever, because you try to find some sense of morality in the people you're going up against, but there's none. This is one of the first times I actually endured so many losses between people that I know that were killed. So, with each and every piece of news, tragic news that I get regarding friends and close people and acquaintances, I fear for myself and family even more because it feels like absolutely no one is safe, but it went from a feeling to an absolute fact. No one is safe anywhere. If it's full of what's called drones and F-16s and all that sounds of bombardment, you're constantly in fear for your life. But at the same time, if it's calm, if there's little to no absolute noise of drones, the F-16s and bombardment, you're very, very worried at the same time because it could come back at any time and generate the sense of fear, insecurity, and danger in you at any time. So with each and every passing day, you're very sure that you're not safe. And we're just people waiting for our turn to be the next number. It started with 1 to 100 civilians killed. We're talking about 30,000 or 32 plus thousand killed now, let alone people who are injured.
How can you describe starving? What did you face first?
The first days of war, you could still go to the markets, find some groceries, find some food, find some chicken, find some snacks, and you'd get a big number and stock up because you're not sure what's going to happen or when this is going to be over. So you just need to stock up. But then what happens is after days and days, we're not talking about a day or a week of aggression or genocide. After going into day 10, many markets were like, we don't have anything to offer anymore. It wasn't just about things being expensive. That happened on the first couple of days. If you buy like a kilogram of something for $1, it starts to be a kilogram of something for $2 or $3 or $4. And it was acceptable because it's a state of aggression. You're just happy that you found something to prepare and eat. But then so many markets and grocery stores and bakeries were like, we're out. We don't have anything. And that's where it gets to a true level of starvation because every day you wake up and you start chasing your meal or a couple of meals to survive.
Can you just tell us more about your daily things? What did you do during the war?
Okay. So I think one of the most highlighted ones would be in my time with me and my relatives and family and Khan Yunis at the south of Gaza Strip. If we managed to get sleep, if it was a calm night, we'd still wake up by dawn and we'd divide ourselves. We were living across two bakeries. So we divide some of them to stand in line at dawn. We're talking around 4 or 5 a.m. to go there and stand in line to be able to get a plastic bag full of bread, which is, of course, not enough. But that's why multiple people stand because we're talking about 30 people in a home. A plastic bag of bread would not be enough. And we'll divide ourselves to more people going to purchase groceries like vegetables and people going to purchase any types of snacks they can find, any type of canned food, any type of groceries, and other people to go find any means of water to try and ask people if they'd have either the salted water, which would be used for washing, or clean water, which would be used for drinking. And that would go on from dawn to 2, 3, 4 p.m., where we'd be able to gather back at home. And of course, that's all under heavy bombardment everywhere in Khan Yunis, the safe zone. And after we'd gather, we'd start preparing our lunch. This whole idea of people having 3 meals a day, in Gaza, that's not a reality. In Gaza, you can have a snack a day if you're lucky, and maybe have a meal a day. And that's what we're doing basically most of the times. it would be a very good day if we're able to have 2 meals a day. It would be great, which is that would be lunch and dinner. And in the morning, we try and basically salvage just to drink tea or have some biscuits with it. And we just gather around at night, start chatting and hoping for a calm night, which usually wouldn't be. And we'd face blackouts of internet and communication, so we can't communicate with anyone outside or people knowing anything about us or us knowing about anything, our loved ones. And no electricity in what way whatsoever. So we'd go out, try our best to find places to charge our phones. We'd have the barber shop right next to us who had some electricity, so we were able to charge our phones and charge a small battery, which would be enough to power the internet and give us a big light, so we'd be able to stay up at night and not just be in the dark. And that was mostly our days.
Can you just tell us more about electricity? What do you mean actually regarding to charging your phone? Why you can't charge your phone at home?
So ever since day one, the vast majority of the Gaza Strip lost connection to electricity due to the heavy bombardment of the Israeli army across many places that basically they would sabotage and destroy many of the, let's call them the electricity chargers, which stay up on poles all over the streets to power, which would connect the wires to the houses to power the houses with electricity. All of that, with every bombardment that happens anywhere on houses, streets, they would be damaged. So from day one, many people lost connection to electricity. So basically, and then we'd revert to the generators. Many of the people in Gaza had the connection from generators to power in their own home, which is way more expensive than electricity. But it was the other solution to not have 6 hours of electricity a day. So after electricity was out, we go to generators. But then once the aggression started, and day in and day out, those people who powered the generators, they would face scarcity in finding the fuel necessary to power the generators. But then at the same time, even those, you have to find places after any source of energy is out, you try to find places that would be able to charge their phones and hope that they would charge your battery for you to charge your phone and turn a light on and just be able to communicate with the outside world and actually hear the news.
Something we find out during our interviews that people were suffering to go to bathroom or even just to have a shower. Did you face any kind of struggle regarding to this topic?
Absolutely. So we're talking about 30 people in a house that had 2 or 3 bathrooms, and with the scarcity of water, the bathroom is not available at any time that you need it. To save water, you wouldn't be showering whenever you feel like it, because it's not only you or a couple of people in the house. We're talking about 30 people, and we're talking about limited resources of water. So you'd have to time your shower once every 2 weeks or once every time they would be able to refill the water tanks. And your shower wouldn't be you showering and relaxing and so on. No, just give yourself a timer of 2, 3, 4 minutes max to just put some water all over your body and just feel a bit refreshed. And that's it. That would be called a good enough shower. And when it comes to bathroom, the idea of even flushing the bathroom is such inhumane conditions that when you're living with that many people, you can't just flush the bathroom at any time, because all of that takes up much of the water that is in the tanks. And it's not guaranteed for you to be able to find sources of water that easily. You can't actually find healthy water. People are living on water that is less than 70 or 60% clean or filtered. So this is contaminated water. And this basically is hurtful to the human body. And living on it for 103 days, you can only imagine what happens to the people, what happens to the entire nervous system and health system of the people and digestive system.
How did you manage to have drinkable water during this time?
Usually, as in Gaza, there are water trucks running around the entire blocks, and they bring that water from the wells. But the Israeli army, day in and day out, started targeting those water wells, so they would actually forcibly deprive people of clean water. So after days and days out of evacuation, you'd used to secure as much water as you can, but then it gets harder. So we'd find actual, basically bottled water for sale at incredibly high prices. And that was not available everywhere. So we'd go out for around an hour, just scavenging around many places, many markets, hoping to find, and then we'd leave our number at a supermarket, tell them that we'll pay them more, just maybe in hopes of being able to secure water for the very next day.
After October 7th, the Israeli government shut off the pipes that supply Gaza with water. It has since only resumed piping water to some parts of southern Gaza, while some water has entered via Egypt. But it's not reaching everyone, and it's not nearly enough to meet the needs of Gaza's population, requiring many to rely only on the local water supply. According to the UN, however, more than 96% of the water in Gaza is unfit for human consumption. Water scarcity has long been a problem in Gaza since even before this current war. The situation has become more dire as wells, pipes, and water pumping stations have been destroyed. The lack of clean water leads not only to death by dehydration, but also to the emergence of diseases such as cholera and dysentery, which then run rampant through densely populated areas.
Can you just share with us the hardest moment when you were in Gaza?
By all means, the hardest moment was the moment that I received the news of the tragic killing of my two best friends, Khalid and Salah Jadallah, on October the 11th at their own home and with their father, with their sister as well. And that to me was a shock. I lost internet for about 3 days. So after getting internet connection, it was just flooding with messages and updates. So I'm looking, and a friend of mine is telling me, Omar, Khalid and Salah, they're killed. I froze in front of that message for a while, and I just went and looked everywhere, and people were actually uploading their pictures. And it was the hardest moment by far for me during this genocide. The first moment that I ever endured the loss of very close people to my heart. We were actually planning to hang out on basically the Sunday or the Monday of which would be October 8th or 9th, and then everything happened October 7th, and that I couldn't see them. And it left me just saying, who's next, or am I next? No one is safe, even my best friends. That's what happened to them. No one is safe from this. And how on earth is the world just silent? It's not stopping. Can anyone see that nothing is stopping, that you need to do more, that we're dying one by one? When is the moment that you're going to be like, no, this is enough?
Can you just describe your emotion in that time and then your thoughts during this period when you know that you lost them forever?
First thing I did after being in shock is, of course, weep, not just cry. There's no bringing them back. And losing them to an unjust, unfair world that could have absolutely stopped this. There was a chance that if the world did what's right, what's morally right, they would have stopped this before I lost my friends. It left me in anger, it left me in rage, and it left me in disbelief that I lost them. And while I was crying, basically all I did was I'd hold my phone and I just go through videos and photos of us and what we did and our memories, because this is something that Gazans do, and it's one form of resistance to us. None of those who were killed, none of those 30 plus thousand who were killed are numbers. They're people with their dreams, their realities. They meant the world to many people. They meant so much for many people. They had dreams, they had hopes, they had a life. They did good by many people. They made people laugh, they made people cry. They were everything to everyone. So we honor them. We hang their photos, we share stories about them, we share our memories with them, and we do this day in and day out. I'd never forget them. For example, if a ceasefire happens today, it doesn't mean I'm going to forget them tomorrow or the day after or a year or 10 years later. What we do is we make those people, loved ones that we lost, were killed, survive in our memories and our hearts and forever, and we tell their stories and we tell their hopes and dreams to anyone.
Can you describe us how this war just affect your life since the 7th of October, how your life has been changed?
So I went from someone who has their home to someone who evacuated their home. And we know that multiple artillery shellings happened on our residential buildings. So we don't know how much damage is done to our home or if our home still stands or not. I went from someone who can see their friends on a daily basis by just a message or a phone call to someone who can't see their friends. And now, not just can't see them, it's been 6 days since I last heard from my friends in Gaza. I went from someone who can go to the sea in a literal less than 10-minute walk to someone who only sees videos and pictures of the sea and says, yeah, I miss it. I went from someone who had work and had aspirations and dreams of a future, someone who was attempting to build a future, to someone who has no clue what they're doing anymore, what to do with their life, to someone who had the life sucked out of them. I used to have many hopes and dreams, and now I just want this to end, and I just want to reunite with the people, the loved ones, and just be able to know that they're safe and they're okay. And I'm absolutely out of energy, and I'm facing the so called survivor's guilt. It weighs heavy on me, the fact that me, as someone who managed to evacuate Gaza after 26 days, but I left so many loved ones in Gaza, enduring what's happening on a daily basis. That feels wrong. That feels bad. It does not feel right. This is not something like, yeah, I'm happy that I walked out of there alive and my family's alive. I don't care anymore. No, this is not the case. To me, I'd rather be there with them, enduring the danger and possibility of being killed and the scarcity of food and water, same as them, being in the cold, same as them, rather than just being here. The vast majority of them are women and children, and that shows you how they're deliberately targeting civilians. But let's never forget our Palestinian men. Let's leave the mainstream media story that if other than women and children and elderly, the men are terrorists or part of the armed militias. Palestinian men are also civilians. My friends, my many friends who are men and males, they were civilians.
Can you just tell us about your deepest fear during the war? And if there's any moment where you felt, that's it, I doubt that I'm going to survive?
At the start of the war, the deepest fear was basically dying, because you're someone with hopes and dreams and you want to live more and you want to do more. And as the situation gets more and more hazardous and tough, your biggest fear is losing people. You do not want to go through the pain of loss, losing people. I'd fear that more than losing my own self. And then it gets to a point where it's so dangerous and the bombardment is so close, and you hear about very close people getting killed and people that you know and you lived your life with. And you'd hear the news about people who were under the rubble and they were able to rescue one person out of an entire family. And to me, that unlocked a new fear. It's the fact that what if we're targeted, bombarded, and then I'm the only survivor? So then you'd start wishing that if we're going to die, let's all die together, stick close to each other. And day by day, I'd lose the fear of dying because of the harsh conditions of living. You'd wonder, how worse could it get? Dying, you'd start to slowly become okay with that and just waiting for your turn, because you've been pleading for help. So many stories of struggle have come out to the outside world through so many platforms of social media, and no one is moving or doing anything about it. So it feels like that's it, that's our fate, and people are just so accepted of that. And death does not become a fear anymore. There's a saying where many people repeated during the war is, people who are dead, they're the lucky ones. They're the ones who got to live. While we're the ones alive, we're the ones who are dead.
Omar continues his story with the second member of our team, Mohammed.
Oman, my question, please. And which day of the world did you start to think about going out from Gaza to another city or another country? How many days it took?
So once all of this started, October 7th and so on, the first couple of days of 3 and 4 days, you wouldn't have that idea, wouldn't cross your mind. Deep inside, you'd have the hope that this would be over soon and we'd get back to our homes and everything is okay. But then they make you evacuate to the middle area. You think maybe this is really way more dangerous and impactful to our lives than we think. So you start thinking, what's next? Even in the middle area, we're thinking, yeah, we'll get back to our homes maybe. But then we started looking through social media and the news, and people were talking about the fact that if you have another nationality, you can contact the Ministry of Exterior or the embassy and so on and request for you and your family to be evacuated.
As all three passages into and out of Gaza are controlled for Palestinians, only a handful of critically injured Palestinians and those with dual citizenship, like Omar, could legally leave the country. Those remaining are now faced with paying exorbitant sums to brokers with connections to Egyptian intelligence officials to have their names added to lists of individuals permitted to exit and cross into Egypt. These coordination fees can be in the range of 5,000 to 10,000 euros per person.
It felt like maybe this should be it, so might as well shoot my shot. And we contacted the ministry, and it took some time. We're talking about the start of November where we evacuated. It was November 1st, the first time they actually released a spreadsheet that contained countries and names of people who are allowed to evacuate. So during the first month, it just felt, no, I'm just doing something. It might not even work. Why not? Let's just try. By the end of October, it just felt very dangerous that sometimes you'd think, I hope they reply back to us. They called us during the last days of October and they're like, you should go tomorrow because the border will be open and you'll be able to evacuate. We'd wake up, look at the news, the border was supposed to open, but it's still not open. So we decided not to go. We called them back and they're like, yeah, it didn't open, so wait for us. And then they call us on November 1st, and then they're like, the border is open today. You're clear to evacuate, head to the border. We were in Khan Yunis at that time. We actually just went with our bags and literally I had 2 t-shirts. We're in winter, but I had 2 t-shirts. That are summer t-shirts, and I had 1 pair of pants. I had 1 shoes, but there was no going back to our homes. It was already a no way back, and that's where we were able to evacuate.
Could you describe your feelings in this moment? You were happy, you were sad, you were angry. What did you feel in this moment?
At the beginning, when I contacted them, evacuate myself and my family, I think about the idea of, oh my God, I hope it works. We'd be safe, we'd be okay. But then fast forward to the day where we went to the border and we were clear to evacuate. We went inside the lobby, the waiting hall, and we were waiting. And it hit me on my mind. What if they stamp my passport and I just go and I'm leaving everyone behind? That's wrong. I don't feel okay with this. I don't feel like I made it out because I feel like I physically am safe, but mentally, on a spiritual level, I'm still in Gaza. I'm literally still in Gaza. Everything in Gaza concerns and means the world to me. So once they stamped my passport, it really felt sad. In no way did it feel okay or a sense of happiness or relief, because at that point it felt like physical safety is not even close to important as the safety of everyone in Gaza, the loved ones in Gaza.
Another question here too. The beginning of 7 October was like a horror. So you are now out of Gaza. Do you think that you are woke up from this nightmare, or you are just outside physically, but your brain is there in this nightmare, or you are physically and emotionally there?
In all honesty, this is a nightmare that's ongoing and it hasn't stopped even once I evacuated with my family. To me, I'm one of the lucky ones. Many people evacuated, but their family's still there. Many people are outside Gaza and their families are in Gaza. And I feel lucky, but at the same time, I don't feel happy. This is an ongoing nightmare and it will never end unless there's a ceasefire and I'm actually able to contact my loved ones and make sure that they're okay. As much as physical safety used to be important when I was inside Gaza, it means nothing when I'm outside Gaza. I'm someone who is still displaced. I'm displaced in better conditions. I do have water and food and electricity here, but it all feels like huge guilt. It feels wrong to have this thing. My loved ones in Gaza don't have that. And so I'm still displaced up until I am sure that my loved ones are in Gaza are okay and I can get back to my home. I have a home there.
I understand what you mean by survival guilt. But I would ask here too if you tried to do something against your guilty feeling.
So I used to be someone who loved to travel and loved to explore other parts of the world, but now there isn't any joy in travel. Like I'm in a place that's lively, I'm in a place that's rich with people, with things to do, with fun things and activities. I don't want to do any of this. It all feels lifeless. I used to love to go to places and try new things, try new food and shop and get new clothes. I do not want to do that and I don't care about that. And it feels lifeless to me. And I think it will continuously feel lifeless to be able to move on. There's no such thing as moving on. That you cannot move on in any way whatsoever. This is something even after the ceasefire, us, the citizens of Gaza, we will not move on from because it's not a destroyed building. The Gaza Strip is over 70% of the buildings in Gaza are destroyed. So I can still see it that there are so many videos emerged of so many places that I used to visit with my friends and family that are now turned to ashes, and I can't quite believe it. So as much as I'm in disbelief, I can't imagine once I get back to Gaza and see this destruction, how I would feel towards it.
So you are now in Amman, another country, a big city. It's very different from Gaza. The buildings, no bombings there. But is there something in your daily life that remember you in Gaza?
Gaza never leaves your mind at any time. So Gaza is the center of your conversations. Gaza is exactly where your mind escapes to if you ever wander or gaze into nowhere. Gaza is there. The news channel is always open on our TV. We do not go to NBC or movies or entertainment or comedy. It's always on the news. We're waiting and hearing, receiving updates. I open my phone and all I do is go to my friends, message them each one by one, make sure that they're okay. Yeah, I go to social media and I see the stories and posts of people and I post about Gaza. So Gaza is everywhere and Gaza is always the center of the entire purpose and being in me and my life. Gaza will always be there, and it's not something that I can just move past from. And I still strive to get back to Gaza after this is all over and the chance allows it. And at the same time, in Amman, many of the companies, people, brands, they show solidarity with Gaza. So you can see Gaza and the Palestinian flag, and many of the heroes have been reporting on the ground from Gaza everywhere around you.
Do you try now to seek places or friends that seems like to be in Gaza, or they're talking about Gaza, or trying to run out from this place?
You'd have those two types of people in your life. So there's the type of people who the chance allows it and everything is over, they want to leave Gaza. And you can never blame them for that because they've endured so much that they want to find somewhat of a safety because the world let them down and they won't let them live where they belong in safety. But there's the other type of people who want to still be in Gaza after everything is over. And those two people, you cannot blame. Each and every one are entitled to their own decisions after enduring so much. And at the same time, let this be clear. Do not paint Gazans as people who are built to endure all of this, who are built to just be called heroes. For example, the great journalist Wael al-Dahdouh, people just want to always paint him as someone as just a hero that endured so much. Look at him, he's still there, he's still reporting. What he endured is unacceptable. What he endured is deliberate attempts at murder. What Gazans have endured ever since, and Palestinians have been enduring ever since 1948 up until now. We're not wanting your chance of us being the heroes and being the people you look up to. We want to live a normal life. We want to be able to do the simple things in life that you do each and every day.
I have just a question before we finish. What come to your mind when I say Gaza, sea, home? Can you describe these words? What come to your mind?
So when we say Gaza and sea and home, so the first one is Gaza and the third one is home, and they both, to me, mean the same thing. Gaza is home. Gaza is the place that I love and I'm so used to, and I choose to be in. I choose to enjoy the simplicity of being a person who lives in Gaza and who sees Gaza as the biggest, most modern, beautiful city in the world. It does not have to have the shining lights, the big towers, the malls, the brands, the planes flying all over it, the celebrations all over Gaza, by the simplicity of literally connecting all of this, these two words, Gaza and home, to the second word, which is sea, that made Gaza so special. It was going to the sea, the calm place, the place where you can escape from so much that's going on in your life and just feel like you're at a place of serenity, you're at a place of calmness, you're at a place of peace and tranquility. And seeing all of this, Gaza is my home. And I'm someone who's lucky enough to be meters away, like where I live in Gaza City, I'm meters away from the sea. And that means the world to me. And I'm lucky enough. And all of this will always be circulating around me. The simple things in Gaza that we're also missing that makes us appreciate it once we're out of Gaza. I appreciate the idea that there's electricity, but I'm saying, why not in Gaza? I appreciate that there's high speed internet, but why not in Gaza? I appreciate that there are so many brands of restaurants and clothing, but why not in Gaza? What's wrong with Gaza for it to not have any of that? What did Gaza ever do to this world for it to be under such brutal occupation and harsh conditions of life? There are so many memories that they're trying to erase by taking away the places that we made these memories in. But we always think that we will rebuild because we love our Gaza. But at the same time, all the countries who stood against us, they should be held accountable and rebuild what they have destroyed and were complicit in destroying. They read so much of Gaza, but Gaza now, we appreciate it even more. We love it even more just because of what happened to it.
Do you have any message you want to tell to the world?
I'll try to make it as short as possible, and I hope it reaches so many people. And I hope at least it changes anyone who hears it. Gaza really needs you. We've been trying to give you so many educational lessons about Gaza and the history of Palestine. You have to do your research and to know more about us and our struggle for liberation and our struggle to stay on our land and the resistance we have been doing. You have to educate yourself on how to help the people of Gaza. We have given you so many ways. We have told you to voice your cause for a ceasefire and a free Palestine all over social media. We still need you to continuously do that. This is not a trend where you can do it for a week and then stop it. You need to do it each and every day, and especially also after all of this is done, to continue your cause for a free Palestine and for the Palestinians' rights. We've given you the lesson of boycott and how effective it is. The idea of boycott, people, is very effective. I'm not sure how tough it is for you to change your cup of coffee from a company that funds genocide to another company that doesn't do that. How tough could it be when every time you do that, just remember that there's a child who's literally targeted and who's killed? There's a statistic that says that around 10 children daily lose a part of their body. So just think about how effective could you be to just not shop from here, but from another place. You have so many alternatives. We're not telling you to quit some kind of oxygen. We're telling you that there's a cup of coffee, get another one from another company that doesn't fund genocide. This piece of clothing that you like, you will find thousands others from a company that doesn't fund genocide. You do that because boycott hurts the people who fund genocide, who put themselves complicit to this genocide. And at the same time, you're protesting, and that's amazing. But at the same time, think about the idea that your voice is heard and you're impactful. No matter how many days this goes on, keep doing it because we need you. Because as soon as you turn a page and decide to start ignoring Gaza, at the same time, those are the times where killing becomes normal and our life becomes worthless. So be there for us.
At the time of this recording, the current military operations in Gaza have lasted for 193 days. Over 75,000 Palestinians have been wounded. 34,000 have lost their lives. 13,000 of these are children. 8,400 are women. 2.2 million civilians have been displaced. On March 25, 2024, the UN passed a ceasefire resolution for the month of Ramadan. Nevertheless, a day later, Israeli forces launched attacks across Gaza and continue to block relief workers from bringing food and other aid into northern Gaza. As of April 2nd, 2024, Omar is still in Amman with his immediate family. Gaza Voices will be available wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find the links in the description. Follow us on YouTube and Instagram at Gaza Voices 24 and on our website gaza-voices.com.